Hello, welcome to AFU United WFC.
Good evening and welcome to AFU United, the Women's Football Chat Show. Tonight, three guests joining me. I've got Gareth. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. John as well. Nice to have you on a Tuesday. How are you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you, Matt. How are you?
Yeah, all good.
Time as you was 5 seconds ago when Gareth asked you, yeah, I guess.
Might have changed in them 5 seconds. And obviously, Stu as well. It's been a while. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. I'm glad to be back, to be honest, as we were talking before. And my little one's 2-year-old now, so she's going to bed later than 7 p.m, which makes the live recording a little bit tricky. Or if I let out the big secret that this wasn't live.
So tonight's show, then, we're discussing the National League. It's getting to the business end of the season now, so we're going to round that up. Wolves women won the league yesterday. Boldmere St Michael's as well won the Midlands League, so we're going to discuss that. We're going to go around and discuss teams that are local to us, so the North, the Midlands and down South. And we'll also discuss social media and the role that can play in terms of creating awareness for these clubs, growing the game and things like that. I think it's only fair we start with Wolves then. So Stu, I don't know if you want to start off on Wolves women. Sort of obviously they've been building now, putting a team together that's obviously capable of winning that league, and obviously they've got the playoff. But what have you made of it in their season so far?
Well, they'll say that this is long overdue. They'll say that if it wasn't for COVID, they'd already be in the Championship. And to be honest, they're probably in with a good shout of being correct. The only people that would disagree with that would be Ipswich or Southampton fans. They've been primed and ready for Championship, they believe, now for the last 2-3 years. It was all, to say that it was always going to be a bit nailed on is probably not fair to the quality of opposition that they have in the National League North. But the resources that they've got are just far outweighs everyone else. Burnley have obviously gone professional, but they're still quite fledgling in their professional journey. Fylde have done fantastically well, but let's not forget that Fylde were disbanded by their owners only midway through last season, or might be through COVID. To be honest, with the National League having been cancelled twice, it's really hard to keep track of the timeline of how it's all been going on for the last couple of years. But the nice thing about Wolves is that they've just done it properly. They've done it well. They've grown it organically. They've not panicked when it's come to the COVID cancellations. They've just continued to sign players of good quality. The Midlands must be quite good for catchment to sign players, because they've managed to pick up players that could arguably be pushing for positions in the WSL, like Amber Hughes. I'll tell you what, Birmingham would. Well, we know they could have done with her, to be honest. And Danny McNamara's done a fantastic job. I can't profess to know too much in a sense of first-hand information, because being based on the South Coast and a 2-year-old, I've not had the luxury of being able to see them with my own eyes in person. But I did get to watch the game on Sunday, and they're just a good, well-oiled outfit that are too good for the third tier. But then that probably brings us on to the nice point that they're not guaranteed to be in the second tier next year. It's only they're only 50%. Well, it's only half time in their promotion journey, I suppose.
Yeah, and somebody that has watched them, John, I'll come to you. First of all, I'll get your thoughts, and then the second question is: do you think, sort of obviously Stu was mentioned there about COVID, do you think that's maybe held some teams in that third tier North back? Because if you look at it, it's very close. Obviously, Fylde and Derby are up there. Stu mentioned Burnley turning pro, Huddersfield, Forest. There's some very good teams in that league. But what are your thoughts first on Wolves, and then you can take a second question.
Yeah, very strong, very physical. You can see that they are a Championship side, no doubt about that. They've done massively well to win that league. We saw how well Derby started. Halfway through their season, they did go through a blip that did cost them. I think it was a bit more than a blip. I think there was a run of games there where they just couldn't pick up the points that they needed. So they was drifting away, and then it became a bit of a two-horse race between Wolves and Fylde, and Fylde kept on clawing it back, but consistency is the key in the league, isn't it? And Wolves have never dropped away, whereas the points Fylde and Derby have. So thoroughly deserve that. Absolutely, I have watched them play. I watched them play West Bromwich Albion. It was a league game, yeah. I think West Brom was at home, and I think they won that game something like 3-1 ish. I could be wrong, but it was about that. And Wolves were just a different class. There was so much better than Albion, and Albion's not a bad team, by the way. They fully deserve where they are. I think there are two different journeys. I think I do think Wolves are actually flourishing and going from strength to strength, where I think Albion's kind of at that rebuilding stage, and got a few youngsters on board. So Wolves are the better team, but you look at we're very fortunate that we watch Championship sides, we watch WSL sides, we watch Tier 4 and Tier 5, and for me, Wolves are out of place in Tier 3. They thoroughly deserve to be Tier 2, but obviously, as you mentioned, even now that they've won that very competitive league, they still might not get that promotion, and I'm sure we can talk about that as well. Regarding COVID holding teams back potentially, but you have a look at the Wolves setup as well. They have got an amazing backing. I believe they're going to be moving ground next season as well. Whether they get promoted or not, I think they're moving a little bit close to home. I think they're playing Telford at the moment, which is the other side of Wolverhampton to where I live. But they deserve to be in a good stadium, and I think we'll see that across the West Midlands. I think Birmingham will be moving. There's rumours about Villa moving, West Brom moving. So I think there's got to be a few that's going to be moving around a little bit, so that might open up some new stadiums. But yeah, absolutely.
I know of a few good stadiums for them. Molineux, Hawthorns, Villa Park.
Well, we've seen Hawthorns, haven't we? I think was it 5,000 that attended? I think at Hawthorns against Derby. So I think that was a good one, and I wouldn't mind seeing that for these teams
On a weekly basis.
Let's see. I mean, Coles Lane, I think, isn't good enough for Albion. I do think Albion needs to, if they've got aspirations to be a championship club, then I think they do need to move to a better ground. Where that would be, I'm not 100% sure if the Banksy Stadium becomes available, but then they will have the same trouble. The trouble that they've got at the Banksy Stadium is that the share, it's owned by the Bescot, so the Bescot market's on, or some markets on, so it's a bit awkward. So it's always going to be a 6:30 kickoff, basically. So that's a bit awkward. But as for Wolves playing it at Molineux, I don't know if that's just a step too far at the moment. But it's definitely something that they can actually aspire to do in the future. Definitely.
Yeah.
I could derail a whole episode on women's clubs playing at the men's grounds, but so we won't dwell on that too much.
Yeah, Gareth. Obviously, we've not seen Wolves, but have seen other teams that are up there in the third tier north. Like Forest and Burnley, Fylde, things like that. What have you made on that? Obviously, we don't want to go off. I know we talk about this a lot about teams going up, but what have you made of sort of those other teams? Because obviously, we talk about Burnley going pro, and they've probably got some decent resources over other teams. Yet you've seen other teams that maybe have a little bit less that are still up there. But what are your thoughts on that? And obviously Wolves as well.
I think with Wolves, I think they are the best side in that division. And I think it was interesting a couple of months ago. It seemed relatively close. There was a period of time where Derby, Fylde, Forest kind of all were up there and within a point or two of looking to go up. I think just the quality of that Wolves outfit has kind of shown over the last couple of months, and they've kind of gone on to just kind of stretch a lead out and go on and win that title. But I think the other clubs, Derby, Fylde, Forest, Huddersfield, Burnley as well, are all kind of strong sides. Brighouse have got some good players in that squad as well. They won their county cup last week, and I think it's good for the league. It's exciting, and we talk about teams looking to go up a lot. But I think the interesting thing with teams like Burnley is they had a relatively poor or disappointing start to the season. I thought they were probably going to be one of the sides that would be up there and kind of looking to push for the title, but it kind of didn't happen. Made a managerial change on the quiet, really. Like, didn't kind of see too much about Matt B leaving, but kind of made that change, and since then they've been on a really strong run of form. They actually gave Wolves their only defeat of the season, beating 3-0 at home last month, and they're looking strong. I think they've kind of clicked finally with what they wanted to do, because when we saw them against Forest, they didn't look particularly impressive. So I think it's just about teams kind of growing into what they're trying to do, and I think Burnley have done that. Fylde have kind of had a really good consolidation year, challenged for a long time for that title, but after kind of folding 18 months ago, to kind of come back and go again has been really good. And I think there's just some really top quality players in that third tier now, and we are seeing a lot of players now see it as an option to maybe take that step down into the National League with the view to come back up, and that's only going to be a good thing for the quality of the football down there. It's looking probably like Coventry are going to be added into that league potentially, or maybe into the South. I'm not sure, but it looks like Coventry are going to go into the third tier as well. And you look at the players they've got at the moment. If they can even keep hold of a sizable portion of them, they're going to be really competitive, and genuinely can't call who's going to win that league next season, because even if Wolves aren't the teams that are going to go up, those are the sides that are currently 9 points back will kind of strengthen over the summer, and it's no guarantee that if they don't win that playoff, they'll win the league again next season.
Yeah. Stu, I want to bring you in then for the National League South. Obviously, again, sort of similar situation to the North. There's, a lot of good teams, again, sort of fighting for promotion. Obviously, Ipswich dropped points at the weekend. Southampton have got 2 games in hand. You've got Oxford up there, and then sort of Bridgewater down. I'd probably say most likely out the promotion race. But what have you made of that Southern League this year? Because again, Southampton, Ipswich seem to have really gone for it in terms of like resources and facilities. But I don't know if there's anybody else as well as them that you want to shout out. I know you sponsor a few players in that league as well. If you want to start off with that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I could take up the whole rest of the episode, so I'll try and keep it a little bit straight to the point. But very, very similar to the North. You've had two teams that have come up that are at the same level of what Wolverhampton Wanderers, in that they're ready for the Championship. Southampton, or you guys probably know, but the viewers will know, they had their name in the hat with Manchester United to obtain a Championship license. Sadly for them, they didn't get it. Man United did. So for you guys, obviously, it's been a massive bonus for everyone up in the North. But Southampton had to then reassess how they were going to plan their project. They have the facilities and the finances to bring in Championship quality players immediately, but they chose not to. They do have the regional talent club status, so that puts them in quite good stead on the South Coast. They are going to get the cream of the crop, and anyone has any hope of being on the England pathway. And they've moved up the leagues through having good quality young players. They've kind of supplemented it with Shelley Cox and Shannon Sivright, who are both former Portsmouth players, played at quite a high level. Shannon Sivright's one of the England beach soccer players, and those have been really pivotal to help guiding the young players that have in and around them. But when it comes to quality, they're good. They're good. I've spoken to managers when they were playing in Tier 4, and in the end, they just wanted rid of them. They were quite happy when they managed to get promotion through the application process next year, because in a way, I agree with what you say that the Northern Premier will be stronger next year. So if Wolves are unfortunate to lose in the playoffs, then it's going to be harder for them next year. But I'd still say that they're going to be looking to still win that league. And I'm pretty sure if you speak to anyone involved in the likes of Nottingham Forest, likes of Burnley, likes of Fylde, they would probably prefer Wolves to get that promotion place, because they know that then it's fair game for everyone. It's been pretty much neck and neck between Southampton and Ipswich up until about 2 weeks ago when Southampton beat Ipswich. They were 1-0 down at half-time, ended up winning the game 2-1. And it just put them in a great position. And as it lies now, Southampton are a point ahead with 2 games in hand. So the maximum points that Ipswich can get out of 26 games is 64 points. So Southampton have 5 games left. They've just got to win 3 games. I don't know if those that follow us on Twitter may have seen earlier, but I was working out my sums as I was prepping for this show, and the 3 games time, Southampton take on Portsmouth at St Mary's Stadium. So Southampton could clinch the title against their biggest rivals. So that would be a bit of a story. As someone that lives in Portsmouth, I've got a little bit more loyalty towards Pompey, but ultimately, when it comes to the women's game, I want to see a lot of strong teams on the South Coast. Nothing would please me more than seeing the likes of Bournemouth, Minefield, Southampton women, not Saints. The other Southampton women seem to see them all progressing up those levels, because that's what we want. Like when you look at sort of Lancashire around there, you look at the quality of teams within what is probably like a 30-minute drive between them. It's crazy when you think about you like the Blackburn, Fylde, and I'd love to see something like that down the South Coast. But you touched on another team earlier that actually will really be kicking themselves, and that's Oxford United. They're kind of like, obviously everyone knows the club from the men's side, so they're not a nobodies. But at the minute they've got 50 points, and as much as they've had a strong season, they've dropped points against teams that they would easily expect to. You've got MK Dons in a relegation battle, and Chichester and Selsey. Oxford have lost 1-0 to both of them, and had they won those 2 games, that put them equal on points with Southampton. So I know the boss earlier.
So I just wanted to jump on something that you mentioned about Southampton Portsmouth. So obviously, I do think that Southampton will probably be favourites against Wolves, but I'm not saying they'll win, because I'm backing Wolves if I'm honest. But Southampton will go in favourites for a reason as well. So I think there'll be a lot of spotlight on this. You know, the Championship's getting bigger, WSL's getting bigger, women's football's getting bigger. So I do think that playoff game, Wolves and Southampton, which it looks like that's what's going to happen, there will be a lot of spotlight on it. And we speak a lot about creating stories. So the FA Cup, where it was Man United versus Man City, all the hype around that weekend was all about that game, and the other 7 games were pretty much disregarded. You know, there's a story right there for you that Southampton could clinch that not promotion but playoff place against Portsmouth. You know, I think that's something that we do need to shout out about. You know, it could be really bad for Portsmouth, but it could also be really good for women's football, especially down south, because that's a massive story, isn't it, Stuart?
Yeah, definitely, because I've got a lot of loyalty with Portsmouth. I grew up as a boy supporting Man United's men's team, and I still do. Which, when you live down on the South Coast, the glory hunter is the word that you get all the time. So for me, getting into women's football was a great opportunity for me, because it then meant that I felt like I could support Portsmouth, where I go watch Portsmouth men's, but that's more for convenience, and I'd be a fraud if I was standing in the chant singing Pompey till I die. But having the women's team on my doorstep and being able to build sort of friendships within that club, it's been great for me. So I do have a bit of loyalty towards Portsmouth, and I would like to see them delay those celebrations a little bit. But as a bit of for my Since 71 hat, I try and be relatively neutral. But no, I will want Portsmouth to. It would be a shame if they handed the title to their rivals. But it's been a disappointing season for Portsmouth. I still think that Portsmouth have got the best strike force in the whole division, in Shannon Aubrey, Tamsin Bunsen, and Sherelle Cassell. But they've dropped points against the big rivals and teams in the bottom. It's been a real frustrating year for Jay Sadler. A lot of games have been quite close, but just not putting them away. And I think it's just been a real frustrating season for everyone involved in Pompey. So it's not going to be very difficult to motivate them because the game is at St Mary's. So anyone with a bit of personal pride, they are not going to want to see their biggest rivals go and win the title against them. And there is a growing rivalry between the clubs. Being that it's women's football, I guess it's a little bit akin to the rival between Manchester United and Manchester City. It is there. It's not as tribal for the majority of the time. Maybe once the whistle starts, then maybe it kind of ramps up a couple of levels. But generally, it's relatively respectful. But there is a little bit of needle between the clubs. Portsmouth hosted Southampton at Fratton Park, and in that it was a good close game. I think Portsmouth would have felt that they had the slightly better rub of the green in that game. Would have been disappointed not to have been ahead themselves, but then they conceded a goal with 10 minutes left, lose 1-0, and I think for me that kind of derailed their season somewhat. It's from then I don't think they've properly recovered, and it's just been inconsistent really. They can have I'll give you an example. They've played Milton Keynes Dons over the last 2 weeks. They hosted them at Fratton Park again, a big occasion, and they lost 3-0. They go away to MK Dons at the weekend. They win 1-0 well, and it's just a season of missed opportunities. And as I say, Oxford United are going to be ones that I would definitely want everyone to look into next year because they don't get all the headlines. Maybe they're not as they don't have the big Premier League finances behind them, or even the Championship finances behind them. But they've got a fantastic manager in Liam Gilbert, and they've got a fantastic side. And again, they've dropped points that they would never expect to drop. And even just those 2 games against Dons and Chichester and Selsey, it could have had a massive impact on the season. They would be joint top. They've lost at the weekend to Bridgewater, a good quality side. But they would think that they'll be favourites for all 3 of those games, and the 9 points make a massive difference. So I guess maybe the reality is not so much of a missed opportunity for Oxford, and more it just goes to show the increasing rising level of quality within the National League. I don't know if we plan to touch on the 4th tier later on. Hopefully we will. But it's how good. And that is another level that historically you've often found 3 or 4 teams at the top walk their league against 6 or 7 teams at the bottom that can't live with them. But that is now changing. And I've said before when we've been on other shows that for me the National League is certainly the most fun league within the women's football pyramid, and it's the development is it's going so quickly. I don't know about what you guys think about the future of the National League, but for me, now they've got the introduction of the National League board, and we've got potentially more money coming in with the FA Cup. I think it's vital that they bring in the investment for the National League and allow these clubs to develop. It still blows my mind that Southampton and Wolves will not get a penny for winning their leagues. Nothing. There'll be no prize money. And how can you expect a club to develop if they can't invest? I know that I'd love to be there for there to be a position where the National League could go, or at least Tier 3 could go national. But if you were to shave off the top 7 in the north and the top 7 in the south, that's an immense league, and that is going to be really difficult for anyone to win. It would be like the American NFL. Any one of 12, 13, 14 teams would think that they could go on and win it. And any team that would get relegated would be an upset because they're going to be of a good standard. But it's going to be a real struggle for that to happen anytime soon. I know down from the south, everyone dreads the trip to Plymouth because it's an overnighter. When you've got players going over from Kent, from Sussex, if you try and do that in a day, I know that Chichester and Selsey, they did it in a day, and you're leaving at like 6. Well, it's the equivalent of like we do on away days to go and watch them. The only difference is they've got to get there 2 hours beforehand, and they've got to run around for 10, 30 kilometres on a pitch and then drive back. And not all of them have a coach or minibus they can travel on. So a sort of 3-4-5 hour drive is not what you want to do after you've played a football game and you've already done that drive. But it is looking good in the South Coast. I was kind of doing my little trying to work out who's going to stay up this year, because even the battle for survival has been quite interesting. And unless you're referring to Hounslow, but Hounslow haven't won a game all season, and it was only 2 weeks ago they scored their first league goal. But that's probably another episode in itself for the unique story behind their situation. But you've got Cardiff City, a really good club with Welsh internationals that are born and that are bred from that club, but they're in a real difficult position at the minute. They're battling between them, Milton Keynes Dons, and Plymouth. And I was trying to work out, because Milton Keynes have got 1 game left, Cardiff have got 3, and Plymouth have got 4. And I've tried to work out the results that might come in. Cardiff have got Southampton, so that's going to be a monumental win if they can get something from that game. And then they're playing Crawley, Wasps and Gillingham, 2 clubs both doing well at the top. They'd be lucky to get 3 points. If they get 3 points, then that's not going to be enough, especially if Milton Keynes can get a win against Keynsham, which they would be favourites to do. That would relegate Keynsham. That would almost guarantee Milton Keynes on survival. And then Plymouth only have to get 4 points from their last 4 games. Again, one of them's against Saints, so let's call it 4 points from the last 3 games. But they're playing Hounslow, who haven't won a game all season. So you're then saying that they've got to get a point between their game and Bridgewater and London B. So it's going to be a real struggle for Cardiff looking at that. Plymouth have been on a good run. I must admit, I thought they were dead and buried midway point in the season, but they've just been on a fantastic run. And with a striker like Natasha Natman, they've got the quality there. I know that it's been a struggle for them to recruit players, because it is in such a remote location compared to the rest of the clubs. That apart from Plymouth, the next nearest, you're looking at, I guess, Bristol City, really, and then you're looking at clubs like Exeter, and so it's really difficult to retain players down there. So if you've got someone that lives and works down there, fantastic. But for them to try and push on for the Championship, it's almost going to be an impossibility without significant investment. But it is looking good. But I do think sadly it's going to be Cardiff, Chichester and Selsey, Keynsham and Hounslow that go down. And the Chichester and Selsey one will be a real tough one, because we do since '71 we are their reverse shirt sponsors. They've done a fantastic job in reorganising the whole team itself. I think the last so it would have been 4 years ago, they competed with Coventry City to win the league. Sadly they didn't make it, but I think they finished 2nd or 3rd in the end, and I think it was actually Cardiff that finished 2nd. So that just goes to show that what's happened with Cardiff in the last 3 years. They've gone from the top 3 team down to a team fighting relegation. But Sadie, the manager there, she's had to effectively, that team that finished 3rd, she's had to rebuild it. The close season, I think they lost the manager, Aaron Smith, to Southampton Women, and I would say they probably lost about 70 to 80% of their playing staff. So she brought in a lot of players from the youth setup, and I remember speaking to her before the league season started, and she was a bit nervous about what to do, how it was going to go, and my advice to her was just make sure that you've got a fun environment that values the players, and she's done that in a fantastic way. Like they went away to Ipswich Town at the weekend and drew 1-1. And there aren't many clubs that have taken points off Ipswich Town full stop, let alone at their home ground. So it just goes to show they've got the quality, they've got the heart, but those within the club will probably be the first to admit they lack a 20, 30 goal a season striker. And that's always been the difficulty. I think they've probably only, I don't think they've scored over 3 goals very often this season. So the minute they go 2-0 down, it's always an uphill struggle. But it's not for not having the quality in the whole squad, because the heart they've got is absolutely unreal. If you were giving away points on heart and hard work, they'd be up there with the best of them at the top of the league. But you need money and you need resources. And Chichester Selsey is a relatively new club. But it may well be that when they do get relegated, they're going into a high-level fourth tier. So with the existing development of the fourth tier, I like to think that Sadie will be able to keep the majority of her squad together, because she's going to be going into a league that are going to potentially have AFC Bournemouth, it's going to have Swindon, it's going to have Exeter, it's going to have one of my local clubs, Moneyfields, in there. And we'll do plenty of talk on Moneyfields, because a certain someone I know is going to be moving over and taking over their under-18 side next year. So you'll hear that name a hell of a lot more. But it's a good league, and one thing I would like to see for a bit of fun, I don't know how you guys would think about this, is how could it be for a pre-season friendly for NBA style North vs South game? That'd be good, wouldn't it?
I think some of us in that, well, not in that league, but up here in Tier 4, we're just trying to get through the season at FC. We're chatting about that beforehand. But yeah, it's interesting actually, and I know obviously something I want to, I'll bring you in on this, Gareth. Obviously something that Stu mentioned. Then he was talking about the potential of maybe combining the sort of top 7 in the North and South. And what I was going to ask you was actually not on that idea, but what I was going to say was, do you worry that maybe next season, that obviously because there's the playoff and you can, and I know we've talked about this, we can obviously still not go up despite winning the league. Do you worry that maybe teams will look at it next year and think, we've not got a chance of competing? Or do you think that's going to be better because they're going to plough in more money and investment to their team? Because at the minute, if you look at Tier 3 North and Tier 3 South, like we've talked about, top 6, 7 teams look very strong, decent investment. And then the rest of them probably look at it and think, if we stay up, we've done well, but they kind of maybe feel like they've got nothing to play for. The ones that sit in the middle, you like to Brighouse, where they're not going to go down, but they're not going to go up. I suppose, do you worry for teams, or do you think that's going to be better next year because more should invest to sort of decrease the gap?
I think it could go either way. I think we're going to see teams that are going to look at it and going to think, okay, well, we need to strengthen and we can kind of put something together. Brighouse they're a good side. We've seen them twice this season, in pre-season and then in the FA Cup as well. And they're a good, well-organised side, and they've got some top players in there. One of the Brighouse players is still FC's second highest goal scorer from the season, and she kind of left in November after the FA Cup fixture. So, I think we'll see teams like that will strengthen. They will add players. And I think what we'll start to see is some players that maybe aren't getting the game time they want in a championship, but are championship quality, looking to teams potentially like Brighouse to then come back up. We saw that with Freya Thomas last year, released from Leicester after winning the league, went to Forest, started the season there, and then obviously got the move to Coventry. But when we spoke to her, she kind of specified that she'd made that move to take a step back in order to come forward again. So I think we'll see a lot of players doing that. And I think that the overall quality of the league will improve. I think particularly with the North, I think Feds and Newcastle, we'll get onto those later, are both far too good for the fourth tier. So whoever wins that league is going to go up and they're going to be competitive as well. I think that's what we want to see. We want to see greater competition and that gap closed. I think if you look at the Northern Premier Division, there's about 5 or 6 points that separate second and sixth. If you can get a few more teams to kind of close that gap, I think, like Stu said, if Wolves go up, that's going to make that league even more competitive. And the same will be the case in the South as well. If Southampton are the ones that go up, that's going to make that league even more competitive, because it just takes the dominant side out of it, and kind of just makes it overall more competitive. I think Ipswich have done really well. They got awarded promotion at the end of last season after kind of 2 years curtailed in Tier 4. So they were kind of given that promotion. They've come up and they've challenged Southampton, and at the moment they're top. I think they're unlikely to stay there, but I think to come up after 2 curtailed seasons and being awarded promotion, it could have gone either way. And and they've smashed it, and they'll look to build on that next season as well. So I think it's the more players there are, the greater the talent pool, the greater the competition is going to be. When there's competition for places, like we said, if they're having to drop down to get game time, that makes that league stronger. I think that's likely to be the way in which it improves.
So I'll jump in there quickly. I'd love to know what you guys think the future holds for a club like Brighouse. Obviously doing fantastic work, fully deserving of their high position this year and their stature within the third tier. But when you look at the tier below and you've got the likes of Leeds United in it, Newcastle United, those are two clubs that have got Premier League funding and that could throw more money than Brighouse. Well, they could throw enough money that whatever Brighouse's running costs are this year, those clubs should be able to throw at their club on a monthly basis. When you look at the spare income, like let's not even get started on Newcastle and the spare money that they've got. I just wonder what you think the future holds for Fylde as well. If you're not attached to a club that has English Premier League or English Men's Championship funding, do they have much hope to retain their place in this level of the pyramid?
It's going to be interesting because I think for me, I look at Leeds' results this year, and 1 minute they're flying and they're competing for sort of top spot, and then 1 minute they drop off. And I think the other week they lost to Norton, who were fighting relegation, sort of third, fourth, bottom, and they're quite comfortably beaten as well. And it could have been more than the 2-0 result it was. But it is interesting, like you say, in terms of like the funding. I thought that Fylde were going to be, a close second to Wolves, but actually it turns out that Fylde have had a little bit of a rocky run and dropped off. And like you say, without that sort of funding and resources, it does sort of lead to what I was asking Gareth about, clubs cut adrift. I don't know if you want to add to that, John, either, Tier 4 North or Tier 3.
Yeah, look, I'm sure I asked a very similar question to yourself, Stuart, and you a few weeks ago, and you came out with a good answer, and it's always stuck in my head. You said that some of these teams will have a ceiling, and it's whether or not other teams can kind of like catch them up. So obviously, I was kind of looking a little bit lower down. I was looking at like Tier 5s who are attached to men's teams, but obviously not as wealthy as, for example, your Leeds United, etc., and other local clubs to myself like Wolves and Albion, and you said that they'll be able to get to a level based on ability and how well they've run their individual team, but that they will have a ceiling. And I was looking at that, and I do agree that you have to do something very gradual. That's built up gradually, and obviously got a team that can win pretty much anyone. We saw Leicester men's team do it a few years ago. It is doable. However, when you've got a club backing you, they've always got that option just to pump a bit of money in. And when you see a team dropping down that maybe shouldn't be dropping down, we saw it obviously. Liverpool have suddenly changed it around this season. That might not have been to do with ability on the pitch. That might be something else. But Liverpool have got money there to throw at it if needs be. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? That they have always got that cushion when you have got that men's team. On the flip side, you do look at the likes of Durham. They've done really well this season. So there are always exceptions, but I would always like to be attached to a men's club just in case, just for a rainy day, basically.
I was half expecting Newcastle's owners to go in and buy Durham and then just effectively swap over, but no, it looks like they're going to try and build organically with their team. I don't know if it's a fact, but I'm on the understanding that at least Amanda Staveley's come out and said that she wants to pay her players next year. And with their defeat at Chorley at the weekend, it looks like the Liverpool Feds in the driver's seat to get promoted. So then you're looking at another situation with Wolves and Southampton. You've got a team in the fourth tier that none of their opposition won't want them in their league. They'll just be like, no, just hurry up and get out. You're getting paid, and we're all paying subs. It'll just be another world. The clubs in that league will just want rid of Newcastle as soon as possible.
Yeah. Gareth, do you want to add to that? I mean, again, it's becoming, for me, it sounds like it's going to become a bottleneck at some point, because if we're talking paying teams in Tier 4, and I know, like I said, again, we don't need to go off on the promotion thing, but at what point do we, say enough's enough, or, yeah?
I think the thing in terms of like the future of the clubs, it's going to come from the funding. When there's kind of prize money and that FA Cup prize money as well trickles down, then those clubs that can kind of make that run into the FA Cup and can kind of get that prize money can look to kind of reinvest as well. They're obviously not going to be able to invest as much money as clubs like Leeds and Newcastle, but you're looking at a club in Liverpool, Feds, looking at kind of winning that league and winning promotion, and they haven't got the funding that Newcastle or Leeds have got, who are currently second and third. So I think also Durham are a good example of a club kind of being run well, in the sense that there's strong connections to the university. So any kind of good players that are going to the university can look to play for Durham as well. And they've also got the luxury of essentially having a reserve team in the league pyramid as well. So there's obviously Durham playing in the Championship and Durham Sestria in the 4th tier in the Division 1 North, who are a strong outfit there. And they have a couple of players that will kind of flick between the two sides depending on where they're at. So having that ability to kind of play for the reserve team and kind of earn your place in the first team as well gives Durham potentially another unique selling point for players that are looking for a club around that area. Okay, well, if I go and play for Durham, then we're kind of starting this in at Sestria, and there's the potential there to move up and play in the first team as well and play Championship football. So I think they're going to have to look for other forms of competition to attract players, but I think the prize money is going to be a big thing, particularly now with the FA Cup restructuring of prize money. That's going to be really important. But also, I think it needs to go further. It needs to be prize money for the league as well, because that's going to kind of be what really helps to keep clubs afloat. Because we saw Bolton; they've kind of folded, and I think they have reformed, but I'm not sure kind of what league they're playing in. But yeah, we don't want to see that happening too much. Obviously, Bridgewater were Yeovil, but aren't anymore, and so we kind of want to see it be sustainable, but obviously we also do want to see the kind of sides invest, and Leeds and Newcastle should be investing in their women's team, even though it is going to be a point where it is going to take at least 2 seasons after this one really to get rid of them from the 4th tier. We want them to invest, but what we don't want to see is a position where only the top 20 sides in the country with men's teams are going to be the ones that could possibly compete for the WSL. We don't want that. We do want to see teams like Durham be able to kind of push on and go for promotion to the WSL. They've been there or thereabouts for the last 3-4 seasons, but it's just difficult because they lose to Man United, they lose out to Aston Villa, lost out to Leicester, and losing out to Liverpool this season. So each year they've kind of been thereabouts over the last 4 seasons. They've lost out to a side with Premier League funding. So it's just tricky. But there are hopefully going to be funding opportunities for them. But we just need that to trickle all the way down as well to 4th, 5th, 6th tier.
Mm. John, I want to bring you in because I know you were just mentioning about sort of, Star Wars FA Cup run, had that prize money come in. So I suppose what we can do is we can talk a little bit about the prize money, and what we'll do is we'll chuck in, obviously, sort of the Division 1 Midlands, because obviously I mentioned at the start of the show about Boldmere winning that. You can talk about Stourbridge as well, and anything that we need to sort of clear up on T4 as well. Because I know looking at the Division 1 Midlands, obviously, big team that has struggled and had various run-ins with the FA. Doncaster Bell was obviously second in that league. Not quite done it. You've then got Lincoln City as well, and then there's sort of a bit of a gap between 4th downwards from the top 3. But your thoughts on sort of those leagues, and also the running costs for the year when this FA Cup money does come in.
So Tier 4, the one that you're on about now, the one above my local teams, above Stourbridge, is a league that I think, and might say something controversial, and Stuart might say the opposite, is the one that needs the most work, because when I look at that league, I see three championship, the top three championship clubs go into the WSL, and they wouldn't even they'll be lucky to get halfway. I see the top three National League winners, like for example, Fylde or Wolves or Derby, from that one going up to the Championship, and I don't think they would finish above halfway in the Championship. Skip that next one down, and I go for the league that I'm in, Stourbridge, Tier 5. If they went into Tier 4, the three top teams there, they would more than hold their own, and I think that they would actually finish in the top half of that league. So for me, I think that Tier 4 kind of level is a league that I think is the opportunity to do what Stuart says, where you kind of have your three top tiers, and then Tier 4 is where it would considerably break away. I think that's the league that needs to be stronger by promoting more teams, of course, and obviously get into this debate. But if you promote three of the top teams in Tier 5 into Boldmere's division, or current division at least, then that would really make that stronger. Boldmere, obviously, fantastic season for them. I think they're about 5 points. Are the 5 points clear with one game to go, something like that? Thoroughly deserved. I don't think they've had the competition that some of the other tiers have had. I'm not on about all of the tiers. I'm just on about that particular league. Thoroughly deserved. You see some of the Boldmere weaker players are going to Tier 5 and lighting it up there. So you can see it's a very well-run club. A lot of players that obviously wanted to leave to get game time because they are doing so well. They've got some good, strong players. But for me, I think Boldmere will do well in the next tier up. They'll definitely hold their own. But the league as a whole, I think, is quite weak. I think you look at the bottom of that league, they deserve to obviously drop down. I think there's three teams that's going to drop into one of the leagues. So I don't know which one just yet. But for me, I think more teams can get promoted and do more than hold their own in that league. So, yeah, I think something needs to be done in that league. Gav, do you want to jump in on the promotion on that, and then we can talk a bit about prize money and stuff?
Yeah, because I don't necessarily agree that promoting more teams is the answer, because we've already got 3 teams from Tier 4 being relegated. And in a 12-team league, there just isn't really any scope to promote anybody more in, because it would involve kind of relegating a third of the league, which, already relegating 25% of the teams in the league is mental to me anyway. I think that the difficulty isn't necessarily the quality of the division as a whole. It's the quality of the top couple of sides. I think, in the north, for example, you've got Feds and Newcastle that are much, much stronger than everybody else. And then Leeds, who are in third, are as close to Barnsley, who are in the relegation zone at the moment, as they are to Newcastle, who are second, or Feds, who are second. I think Newcastle's still top. So I think there's just a gulf between the top couple of sides and then the rest of the league. I think the rest of the league is still pretty strong, and anybody can beat anybody. We saw Alnwick, even though they're bottom and haven't won a game all season, got a draw against Chorley a couple of weeks ago, scoring 3, and then Chorley go and beat Newcastle at the weekend. So I still think it is competitive and quality is there. I think it's just there are a couple of sides who are too good for the league. And, I think the issue is still going to be there in the 5th tier as well. I'm just not quite sure how you solve it by kind of promoting more teams, because it involves relegating more teams from the top.
Yeah, I do get that. When I say promote more teams, I was kind of hinting the fact that the teams in the league below them should be in that league already, I guess. And it could take another 2 or 3 seasons for them to actually get promoted. The quality of the division that I was kind of referring to, and I was in different divisions, it's the same tier but different division. I think there's several teams below that could get promoted into there and actually hold their own, which I think it's good, because with just a very minute bit of investment, you can suddenly start going from Tier 5 to Tier 3 quite quickly, and you could potentially go one level down from there as well. Some tier 6 teams. I am talking very much West Midland based here because of them the clubs that I follow. So sorry guys, I'm not too sure about the northern ones, how that's kind of looking, but I do know the strength in depth of that. The West Midlands tier 5, and I would like to see more of those, and they should be up there. But obviously, I don't want to relegate anymore. But I do think more quality teams do need to get into that league when you look at the teams below them. What was the question on the finances again? Oh, the cup runs. Yeah, so Stourbridge obviously had a fantastic cup run, beating tier 3 side Derby in one of the rounds, beating tier 4 side Cambridge right after that. Done amazingly well. Got to, I think it was the third round proper where they played the championship side Sheffield. Ended up losing 3-0. And I think I've got my numbers right here. So we would have actually been 30 grand better off next season as opposed to this season, which would have probably covered their pretty much the whole season. So it's amazing amount of money there. But obviously it's an incentive for next season. I'm sure if you had said to the same Stourbridge team now, take exactly the same run next season without progression, just exactly the same run, getting the third round proper, that would take that as well because we're massively overachieved this season in that cup. But yeah, 30 grand for a tier 4, tier 5 team, brilliant.
Stu?
So just coming on to your point about tier 5 clubs, I think I know through Matt also coaches at girls youth level. You coach with girls, don't you? You still think, Matt? Yeah. I know from being down south, we've seen a massive influx of players, even in the under 15. In the under 15s last year, we had 4 divisions, and there were more girls teams in that division than there were in boys teams across anywhere in Hampshire. And when you think about boys, it's a big participation sport. It is to a degree still, but it's not taking into account the sheer volume of girls clubs that are now running, and at a good level as well. When I think about even just our personal league in Hampshire, not to mention that we've got some clubs that also go play in the local branch of the Junior Premier League. That's a good level, and a lot of these players are probably going to be inhabiting the 5th tier in the next sort of 4 to 7 years. And the success of the Lionesses in the She Believes Cup, in the World Cup, in this summer's Euros, it's going to be most felt in the 5th tier, because these are going to be clubs that are going to have players that probably aren't good enough to make a career out of it. So therefore, they're going to go for their local club. A lot of tier 5 is obviously is regional, and it's regional at a good level with some good established names in there. I know a lot of the clubs in the 5th tier within sort of Hampshire, southwest and southeast, they're all playing in legit football grounds. And that little things like that could be the difference between keeping girls in football, because we know there's a huge dropout rate once they hit 16, 17. But if they start, but with college teams now on the rise for women's teams, and their pathways are starting to open up into these sorts of clubs, you're going to see a little bit like we've seen in the 4th tier. I would say the 4th tier 5 years ago was you generally have 2-3 clubs at the top that were of a good quality and would feel like they should have been up in the 3rd tier, and then the rest of the teams were sort of making up the numbers and never had any hope in getting promoted. That's very different now. That in itself is a good standard, and that 5th tier will see that in 3 to 4 years, and especially, like I said, especially when you've got these young players coming up. So it's certainly exciting. I don't know about sort of your experience up north, Matt.
Yeah, I was going to come in on that actually, because it's interesting you mentioned that under 15s age bracket, because that's exactly the same here. There's so many under 15s now, talented ones, and even some of the players that I'm working with now, a lot of them at that age group are getting academy trials, whether it's with Blackburn, whether it's with City, United, it varies between sort of WSL clubs and sort of Championship as well. And there's the odd sort of third tier, like Suffield and Burnley, things like that. But it is interesting. And obviously, like you say, there's a lot of those players that, are sadly, not making the grade. And it's then a case of, like you said, where do they go? Did they go into the third tier, the fourth tier, the fifth tier? And I think that's something, and we're going to do a show on this in the future, but, about clubs in the third and fourth tier and fifth tier having development squads and why it's important. Because, like you said, the talented players that may not make the grade, but then they're going to be the top players in these sort of third, fourth, fifth tiers. If they're getting turned down for likes of City and United, I mean, speaking from obviously experience at FC, they've been fortunate to take some WSL academy players from the likes of Man City and Man United and Liverpool as well. So it just shows, and these players are like 16, 17, but they're shining. They're very, very good players in the fourth tier. So it is interesting that actually across the board, that sort of age gap is similar, or the age group.
Can I touch on? I want to touch on a player that was doing really well at Blackburn Rovers in the National League, and she got a dream move to Manchester United, and Ella Toone doing good things. So there's the talent there if you nurture it.
Yeah, absolutely. John, was there something you wanted to come in on?
Yeah, just something that Stuart mentioned earlier, and we kind of touched on it as well regarding the amount of young players coming through now, and I get that. But there's also, I think, with the amount of competition out there, that tier 3 and tier 4 players clubs will be forced to pay their players so they don't lose them. Now, I'm not too sure about your area, but my area, which is quite dense, West Midlands, it's full of schools, full of teams, full of big clubs like Wolves, Albion, Birmingham, Villa, Stourbridge, Kidderminster. Potentially, to keep hold of some of these players, they might have to start offering contracts. Do you think that's something that could potentially happen?
Is that to me?
Yeah, listen to Gareth.
Let me put it into. Oh well, just sort of briefly, just talking from experience of players that I know and players I've spoken to. The difficulty you've got at National League level is they can't afford to pay them anything other than sort of pocket money or expenses. Many of players that I know, it's the same with the players that play in the National League that would get snapped up by a Championship club tomorrow, but they probably earn a good wage quite often as a teacher or in a certain job that might pay them sort of like 30 grand a year plus. We know full well, after you speaking to Reece Land last week, that he said the average wage is not what they make out. The majority of Championship players could probably earn the same, getting a full-time job working in a bar or a restaurant. And if they got promoted to manager there, then they'd probably be on a bigger wage. So a lot of these players quite often will stay in the National League and stay in a particular area, maybe leapfrog between 2 or 3 different clubs in the area, because they can't afford to give up their club, and the club can't afford to give them a competitive wage. I can't remember who it was, but I know that there was a player at Lewis who, I think WSL clubs were sniffing around quite a lot, but she would only be a squad player, so therefore that she's like, I can't give up my job. And we could do another whole other episode on what's happened at Coventry United, where players have given up their jobs to go full time there, and then they've gone through what they've gone through there. So that is probably the one very difficult bit within the National League.
Yeah, Gareth, do you want to come in obviously on sort of the 7-day ruling, and obviously it links in with what John was saying about potentially being paid?
Yeah, I mean it's tricky at the moment to. There's no kind of security even for clubs. The 7-day ruling kind of in the National League, if you want to sign a player from somebody, there are some kind of deadlines throughout the season, but they're kind of relatively late. They don't follow the kind of strict transfer deadlines of kind of August and January that the WSL and the Championship do. So all you need to do is email the club secretary, say, okay, I want to speak to this player, and then you get a week to speak to them and come to a decision, and then they're gone. That happened, I know to FC after they played Brighouse in the FA Cup. I think it was back in November. They played Brighouse, and a couple of then Brighouse put 7 days notice in for Ella Hartley, and then she was a Brighouse player. Kind of halfway through the season, and then you then trying to look for somebody as a replacement. So I think that's why kind of squad turnover is really high, and obviously players that they get the option to go and play at a higher level, and they're going to take it. So it can be really tricky for clubs. It's kind of.
But then you'll also on the flip side of that, I also know a lot of clubs that have benefited because they feel like they've got a good setup. So, like Portsmouth, for example, I think they signed either 6 or 7 players that came from the Championship last year because they've obviously thought, right, okay, well, actually, they've got a good club down here. They've got a good setup. Portsmouth are playing at Havant and Waterlooville Stadium, so it's good quality. It's artificial turf, so on the Astro, so you're going to get games played throughout the year. You're not going to worry. You're not going to go through spells like some clubs do where you don't get a game in 6 or 7 weeks because of weather. So it does kind of work out otherwise. So I think it's probably a whole episode in itself when you're talking about the displacement of talent. I think one of you, it might have been you, Gav, touched on earlier, that you're going to find academy players that are going to be dropping down into Championship and the National League because it's better for me. If you're Manchester City and you've got some great academy players, don't go playing them in the reserve league. It's just there's no real benefit to that player in the long run. They're better off going down to the National League and playing competitive fixtures at a good level week in, week out. So, yes, you're right. The 7-day approach can absolutely destroy teams of their talent. But a lot of the players are quite loyal. They are loyal. They will want to push themselves. But if you've got a good project going, they'll stick around for it. I know of a lot of players that have dropped down the divisions. I know of one that left Watford and went to play for Fulham, 3 divisions down, purely because she wanted to sort of enjoy her football in a relaxed environment with a nice club, nice facilities. But it's still Fulham. They've still got a great little setup, but it's it's that little bit different.
It also means as well, doesn't it, that if you do end up losing a player, you also benefit from the 7 days as well, because then it's much easier for you to go and actually kind of get that replacement. So it swings and roundabouts, and I think the club loyalty is there, and I think what we do want to see is kind of development of the loan system. Like you say, Man City want to kind of get their academy prospects out on loan. United could do with, I know we loan quite a few to Championship, but I think we could do with more going out and playing National League, because as well, it's particularly when you're 16, 17, to go and play against some physical teams like Norton yesterday, at the weekend, a strong physical team, and that's going to be a real benefit to a lot of players. So, it's good.
Yeah, absolutely. Last bit of the show, I just want to obviously touch on the role social media plays. I know we have talked about it a little bit before. But John, I want to start with you, obviously growing it now. Again, I can only draw an experience really from Tier 4, but I know looking at, I was looking for results yesterday, and some clubs haven't tweeted since February, and I'm like, it's April, and people say, well, what's this score? What's that? And I genuinely don't know. What do you make of it? Because I know some clubs are dire, some clubs are brilliant, some clubs have sort of woken up halfway through the season, not mentioning any names, Charlie, but they seem to have really found the use of graphics and tweeting results recently, and sort of boosted their visibility, shall we say. But what do you think about it as a whole? And you can go tiers 3 to 5, 3 to 6. Yeah.
I think clubs are realising that social media is one of the biggest ways to grow the game now. It's if you want some of your local people to come to a game, it's going to be very hard word of mouth to try and convince people. It's usually just friends and family. So to reach out to new people, I think clubs are well aware that social media is the way to go. You look at the amount of followers that some clubs have, that's tier 5 or tier 6. It shows that there is an interest there. Obviously, the challenge is then to bring them followers actually to a game, and then to a game regularly. I think the prices of the games are very, very decent. You look at between £2 and £4 for tier 4 and 5 the ones that I go to at least. So I think it's very, very affordable for a Sunday game that's local to your house. So what was the rest of that question, Matt? I was thinking about something else.
Just the role in growing it. Obviously, like I say, because like I gave an example of Chorley before, they didn't really tweet much. You got a full-time result and maybe a half-time score, and now they've got graphics and it says the next 4 games are here. You've got pictures. I think there was highlights of a game the other day, which, again, depending on what club you follow or you're interested in, again, highlights are quite rare.
So, it's very often that we're at a game and some teams don't even give their full-time result until midweek. So it's very hard. So, like, for example, if I'm at a Stourbridge game, you look at some of the other teams that's in their league and they won't even give any. It's one thing not to be able to give running commentary, because I appreciate it's very often the case where there's not enough volunteers to do that, or you're relying on the substitutes on the bench or the coaches on the bench to try and update, and that's wrong. You shouldn't be relying on players and coaches to do that during the game. But some clubs are lucky that they've got volunteers to do that. But the social media accounts that are the best ones are the ones that's most active. I don't think there's a day that's gone by where Stourbridge in Tier 5 hasn't tweeted every day, whether it be to do with their under-18s development team, academy team, or lower, or whether it be just someone's birthday, a statistic about how many hat-tricks have been scored. And these are the accounts just growing. You look at the start of the season, how many followers they had, and then at the end of the season it goes up by hundreds, and then you look at some that's hardly tweeting, that they don't get any interaction. I think what's also good is they help each other, so they interact with each other's accounts. So I think that's a good thing. So I'm a massive believer in growing the game together. That's why I'll always interact with Man City fans and Chelsea fans and Arsenal fans. I might banter them throughout the week and banter them on game day, but behind the scenes I will message the likes of Emma Sean at Man City Fancast, Man City Women's Fancast, because it's really important that we do promote each other. And Stourbridge and some of the West Midland teams are very good at doing that. I know Connors looks at West Bromwich Albion a lot, and Wolves a lot, which is obviously a tier or two higher than Stourbridge, and they're fantastic at it. They put interviews out, they put amazing graphics out. I think interviews is a big one. I think graphics are quite easy. I think not enough teams do it, but I think it's easy.
I hope there's no content creators on here, right? Because I was going to jump in and say that your media person and your club photographer are probably the biggest unsung heroes in women's football.
Okay, let me just
let me and Gareth just dust our shoulders off for that bit. I'll take that all day long.
Let me dig myself out of this hole.
No, what I'm saying is it's easy to do because someone can sit at home by themselves to do it. I appreciate they don't get paid, but it's easy.
John, I'm not sure there, pal. If I sat at home and said to somebody at FC, can you just send us this, mate? I think they'd say, get yourself.
No, I'm not saying. Let me just... the point I'm trying to make. It's a lot harder to get an interview than it is to get a JPEG of someone's face saying happy birthday. That's
okay, yeah. If you
right, John,
someone's not played on Adobe before, have they?
So, the National League at the moment have a template system which they send out to all clubs, and kind of a lot of the graphics kind of made from the template. But in order to fill out those templates, a lot of them require an image to be kind of added to. So you've got to have images that are available for you to kind of add to it. And even if you're using the ones without the images, you're still trying to do it as the game is going on. So an example from the FC United game at the weekend, goal goes in. So after celebrating the goal, quickly trying to type in the minute the goal was scored, who the goal scorer was, onto a graphic to then tweet. After that goal has happened, the manager then makes a substitution. That's another graphic. So then adding the players for the substitutions on, so then get that tweeted out. And then this was in the 90th minute. So you're then trying to then get a full-time graphic ready to go out on the final whistle in the injury time that the referee has added on, and hoping that the score doesn't change because you've just kind of clicked export and save on this last one. So, yeah, I mean, the templates are there and they're really useful, and it doesn't take too long. But when things happen in quick succession, it can require.
You've got way off onto different pages.
Or John, when you try to transfer images and you've got so many images to send, just choose one, and then somebody scores when you've got no camera.
Okay. Let's go back to my original point. It's a lot easier to get a JPEG or a graphic onto a tweet than it is to get an interview with what I was going to say with what Wolves and Albion do, regular interviews with players and managers onto the Twitter. So I do still stand by that. I'm not saying it's not hard work, and I'm not saying that I know the people that you're talking about, Stuart. I know Becky Lynn is fantastic, and it probably takes her all week to do one graphic. I know that. And I also know that Anthony at Focus Done and Mr. Rose does fantastic photography work there. I'm not knocking that. But what I am saying is it's a lot easier to get a JPEG onto a Twitter than it is to arrange an interview and put that on there instead. And I think that's where Tier 3's got us, because Tier 2 and Tier 3 do regular interviews and put their clips on, whereas lower down you see a picture or a starting 11 graphic. I think that's a lot more easy to do than an interview. And I want to start seeing interviews. I want to start seeing more videos, because I think that's more traction.
Stu?
Definitely, I think you're definitely right there. It's more traction, but yeah, the media people and the photographers are absolute godsends. So if anyone that's not aware of St. 71, we are effectively a women's football blog, independent. We cover the whole women's pyramid, and we do have some games where I'll get a match report sent in, but there's no images. There's literally no images because there's no photographer there. I've got one great writer who'll go up and see Bradford. And like you said earlier, we were relying on a mobile phone picture that she could take at the time, because there wasn't even match graphics that I could take. And I don't want to put an emblem up there. But they've now managed to get a photographer in. And as you say, if you want to keep content going, having a photographer getting regular match photos of good quality is difficult, because these photographers, I've got a 500 quid camera. It's just here. I've got a little zoom lens on it. But these pictures, I could go to a match and take 300 pictures. I'm probably only going to get 5 to 20 that I'm quite proud of, and that's an expensive camera. So these guys have got lenses that are double the price of my whole camera kit. So it's you can imagine if you're putting money into a club in the 4th and 5th tier, I think it'd be an interesting debate. But I would suggest that actually the harsh reality is that if you're the chairman, before you start paying players, you're going to want to pay an experienced media person, because yes, you can create a graphic on an app, but to get someone that's able to use Photoshop to a good level, they're rare. And to get a photographer with all that kit, and you want to be paying them for their cost, because when it comes to editing and things like that, it might be easier in some respects, but it's certainly not quicker. And that's the thing that anyone that designs a graphic will tell you. Like I could do a video interview now on my phone, latest iPhone. I've actually got a little Rode mic that I can clip into my iPhone, and so that enhances the quality of that. But so I could probably say that with £100 investment, I can actually do videos immediately. Where if you go to say, can you produce a team sheet graphic? That's someone, and I know that because the person that does our graphics that are still relatively simple, he's like, yeah, well, that will take me 45 minutes to an hour to do just that. And you're like, oh, by the time you start mucking it around, it's certainly time consuming. But maybe there's an episode in itself to get the a media person and photographer on, because they're definitely unsung heroes for the amount of time they put in.
Just quickly. Just going to kind of go slightly to the side as well. John kind of touched on social media being used to kind of attract more fans. But I think it's really important for recruitment for clubs as well, and kind of taps into what Stu was saying about the overall setup of the place. If you're a player and a manager's just come to speak to you, the first thing you're going to do, or I would do if it was me, is search on Twitter, search on Instagram, and see what is kind of being put out. So if there are good quality pictures. There are good graphics. There are kind of interviews and stuff as well, where not only like is the club being shed in a good light, but the players are getting themselves out there as well. That's going to make that a more attractive prospect for players to be signing for. And it's not going to be, oh, I'm going to go to this place because they've got a really good social media team. But there's a reason that #United are so successful in both their men's and women's sides. They're kind of looking for promotion at the moment. I know their women's team are, and that's going to be because they have a big YouTube and a big social media presence. So it can be used to attract fans. But I think a big thing as well is recruitment of players.
Yeah, I was just going to answer that. Go on, Stu.
I was just going to say, these are players that have massive commitment to their team, to their craft, and while they're not fully paid professionals, they take it as seriously as a WSL player would, but they've obviously got more barriers and restrictions in place. So when you're exactly right, when they see a club that takes them seriously enough to think, well, let's get some match photos, let's value them. And if it does look professional, then yeah, they definitely want it. I guarantee you, like you said, that Chorley have obviously sort of changed their tact a little bit and they're more present. Bradford as well, like when Lucy was sending the match reports, it was like a struggle to find good usable images. Now I can go on the website and I'm inundated with them, and these photographers are more than happy for you to use their pictures. All they just want is a bit of photography credits, and I know that they're hugely valued by the players. One of our writers, Daisy, she's only, I think she's just turned 16. She's been with us for a few years, but she was supporting Yeovil Town when they were in WSL. Yeovil Town now currently Bridgewater United. She's obviously, through the work we've done since '71 and being quite a present supporter of the club, she's managed to get herself the role of match day media officer, and she's going away with the players, and she is one of the team. She's, as in, though you speak to any of those players, they'll say that what she does to promote the club with match reports and share the news and do it in a professional way that's fun as well, and it's not just BBC straight lace. It keeps it interesting. That they value that because someone is talking about the hard work that they're doing. Because no footballer wants to play for a club that doesn't talk about them, even on their own channels. Just have a look at what I won't spend too much more time on it, but just go and look at what AFC Bournemouth did at the weekend for their club. Their women's team played at the Vitality Stadium, and effectively they took over the men's social media. They had all the staff that would normally be the men's media, would film the game, pre-match interviews, post-match interviews with the boarding behind it. They had all of that stuff out there for the girls, and that's the sort of thing that they should be doing on a weekly basis because it makes a big difference. I don't know about, I probably know about you guys in the sense of I used to laugh at the prospect of having YouTube on my TV at home. I watch more YouTube stuff like this fan-made content than I do BBC, Channel 4, or anything else. And I think I'd probably say that there's a good 7 or 8 clubs that produce really good content. And when you get your own account, you subscribe to that. That's what I do on a Monday evening. I get and catch up on all the interviews, on everything, and it does make a difference. But I guess the difficult thing with the National League is we probably condense probably 7 episodes worth of topics into one. So we've probably only scratched the surface on some of these. So hopefully everyone that's watching this has kind of tickled a little bit of interest because sort of like just to finish up from me, because I know I can talk. The big thing about the National League and Tier 5 and Tier 6 is that there is life outside of the WSL and Championship, and that is one of the big things that I'd really implore football fans to take note of. I know of many fans that would drive 3-4 hours to maybe go watch Arsenal play, go watch Chelsea play, go watch Man United play. But the reality is they've probably got a good club that has decent facilities that probably plays within a 10-15 minute drive. And like John said, pay the tickets probably £4 or £5, and you go regularly enough, you probably start to know the players on a first name basis. And go and find your local club.
Yeah, 100%. I was just going to add to sort of what has been discussed about obviously the role it has to play, especially in the National League. I think spot on. Obviously, Gareth, you were saying about sort of videos and things like that, and obviously Stu mentioned match reports. I think another thing, editing, like obviously Stu, you were seeing the amount of pictures taken, and I did the Her Game 2 campaign with FC United this week, and the amount of time that has taken to get all that content done, edited, put together, quotes off players, graphics for that, like you wouldn't believe. It's probably taken up most of my week. And again, sort of feedback from players and sort of higher up, like CEO and people like that, and even people from the men's side have been very, very, praising and talked it up, which has been great. But yeah, I think if all clubs can get sort of basics out there, of, like you say, some pictures, a final score, and obviously information on games, then that should be at least the minimum standard where possible. Obviously, it relies on volunteers, but again, if we can do it, that's only for the greater good of the game. And obviously, like we touched on, or you touched on, Gareth, in terms of recruitment, you almost not necessarily become a brand, but you want to feel like a brand. You want to be well looked after at your club, and like you say, if they're promoting you, again, attracting sponsorships, things like that. If you're promoting an individual player and you're saying, well, actually, you can sponsor this player and this goes towards, their registration fee or their medical insurance, then, 100%. We have come to the end. We've gone a little bit over, but very good show again. I want to say thank you to Stu for jumping on. You as well, John, and Gareth, as always. It is a pleasure. We're back on Thursday. John, have you got your thinking cap on for your topic? Because I can't remember what you said.
Yeah, we're just waiting on one guest to come back to us before we actually decide on the topic. We may also have a bonus show on Wednesday at 8 o'clock as well. So stay tuned for that one. Friday Night Fan Forum led by Connor, and Saturday Night Live by yourself. And how many teammates have we got left, Matt?
2.
There we go. And then that'll take us into the final game of the United season. So, yeah, plenty to look forward to on the channel. Absolutely.
Yeah, we've got one this Sunday, and then I think I've got 3 players on the final one because we ended up with an odd number. So we had to mix it up a little bit, but yeah, fun times. Yeah, brilliant. We'll keep an eye out on Twitter for updates and obviously links. Stu, do you want to quickly shout out Since 71, all your handles and things like that?
Yeah, definitely. Well, before we do that, I just want to say thank you to any of our readers, because as we've been recording this, we've just been named in the top 3 women's football platforms by On Her Side, which is really nice because that was a public vote as well. So clearly my mum was sat there hitting refresh and voting. So yeah, that's awesome. That's really nice. But anyone that doesn't already follow us, you can see our media Twitter username there. We are present on Instagram and Facebook, but managing all of the accounts is a nightmare. So we're mainly prominent on Twitter, and you'll find us covering everything from international through to non-league, grassroots. If anyone here is interested in getting involved and wants to do a bit of writing, content creating, then jump on in. We're always looking for people to come and get involved, and if that's all informal. So if you know any sort of like Stourbridge fans that want to do any writing, or any Man United fans that want to come on and have a chat, then let us know.
Brilliant. And thank you as well to everybody that has tuned in, and we will see you throughout the week.